This is Love Intervention. I'm Pastor Evans.
I'm Mrs. Evans. So today we want to talk about how we became parents. And that journey started for us way back in 2001.
Way back.
Mm-hmm. We were working at a Christian school, and we did not have health care.
Right.
And we found a free clinic that we went to.
Mm-hmm.
And, we filled out all the forms, and we're like, we don't know why we're not pregnant yet. And
That's what I think that's where you skipped over. We decided we weren't going to have kids for the first few years.
Okay.
All right. But it had been a couple, and we were ready to get started. And we figured we'll just be more intentional about our sex life, and kids would come.
Right.
But it wasn't happening.
Yeah,
then we went to the clinic.
Right. So after a year, it wasn't happening.
Right.
And then in 2001, we went to this free clinic.
Yeah.
Now, it was free.
It was free. And you got free services, too.
Yeah, I'm not sure how medical it was. We got medical treatment, though. So we went there, and we did all the things. We did some tests. But we didn't do, any of the regular tests.
Yeah. Well, at the time, we didn't know what the regular tests were.
Right.
Either.
We were young.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, cool. We can go here.
Right.
And they'll help us out.
Right.
And so we went, and they gave us shots in the butt.
Right.
Now.
Okay. Go ahead.
I don't even know what they gave us.
Yeah.
The assumption is they gave us something to produce more hormones or something. I don't know.
No. I don't know.
My butt hurt for 3 weeks.
Look, I'm not afraid of needles. I'm not.
For 3 weeks.
I'm not afraid of needles. But they had the needle that they used.
Right.
Was probably this long. Filled with something white. That's what I remember. You remember?
We were in our 20s and we were naive, okay?
It was something white, and the needle part was this big. And it was I think they said this would, for me, it was supposed to help produce more sperm.
Okay.
And for you, it was supposed to I don't
help
know.
me produce more eggs?
I don't know. I still don't know.
I don't know. I'm
That's
happy that we didn't grow a third head.
Right. But I think you were saying when they shot us, dog.
It hurt.
It hurt for
3 weeks.
It hurt
I
for
was
a while.
walking like this.
It hurt for a while. I don't know what it was.
I absolutely don't know what it was.
And it didn't help.
And it didn't help.
Because we didn't get pregnant.
No. And so then 5 years later in 2006, because we still hadn't had kids for 5 years, this miracle medical juice did not work.
Yes.
And so 5 years later in 2006, we had Kaiser. Right. Or no, we had Blue Shield?
Blue Shield.
We had Blue Shield, I think. And we went and made some appointments, and we got some legitimate tests done.
Right. Right.
And we found out that the combination of our issues was going to make it difficult for us to get pregnant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And we're I think it's funny now, we're laughing about it now, but at the time, just that timeline from 2001 when we were trying to figure out okay, we're trying to get pregnant, it's not working. All the way to 2006, it was tough.
It was tough.
It was tough, and we would have conversations about what it would be like to have children, and I think we talked about during that time too. We were working through the last episode. We were working through just communicating appropriately and figuring out how to love each other. And on top of all of that, or underneath it, depending on how you look at it, we're having this struggle with a desire to be parents, but not being successful.
And I learned during that time a couple things. The first thing that I learned is don't let people pressure you.
Oh, yeah.
Because we didn't share our business with everyone, people just kept asking us, when are you going to have kids? When are you going to have kids?
Yeah.
And it was tough because we had been trying to have kids for so many years.
Yeah.
But also, I had to remind myself don't go to a dark place
Mm-hmm.
because, I feel pressure. Like your mom was like, what's wrong with y'all? Why are you not having kids?
Yeah.
And I was like, is she don't stay on my business? Love you, Miss Evans. And so it was difficult, and I could have gone into a very dark place. I mean, I went to dark places. I visited there, right? Because I would see pregnant young ladies or pregnant women. I want to push them over. Like I was just like, it was just not good. However, praise God for Jesus, because he was able to keep me from falling.
Yeah.
And so don't be discouraged by people asking you when you're going to have kids, even if you don't have any medical issues. If you're not ready, you're not ready.
Right.
And then another thing I learned is, don't just go places because they're free. It could have been bad for us.
It could have been like, we're laughing at it now, but it could have been bad. We didn't. I don't think we asked enough questions.
No.
And we were just like, sure, give me the shot.
The shot of what?
Oh, the shot was?
Right.
Okay.
So don't just, go places because it's free, and
Yeah.
or don't just go, and plus don't just go places because one person told you about it. Do your due diligence, ask questions, find other people, look on Google, get some reviews, because you definitely want to know where you're going, who you're talking to, what they're giving you,
right,
and how it's going to affect you, your health and or your mental state.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think also what was important for us / me at the time was to remember to check in with my spouse while we're going through it. Right. I don't know if and you can say you're right. I'm not sure how good of a job I did at it, but like hindsight being 2020, like I know I was like concerned about whether or not we were going to be able to have children.
Right.
And I know that I don't mean to laugh, but she told me, like, she seriously was like, she would see pregnant people and we like want to push them over, just because, I mean, you get to a place where it's tough, right?
Right. It gets tough.
It gets tough, and it's difficult because we both were desirous to have children.
Right.
And we have been taking care of, and we'll talk about that later, I guess, but we have been taking care of a couple of our nieces a couple of different times, and it helped me with the practice, but it also helped us, I think, to have a little more difficult time with the fact that we weren't having our own yet.
Right.
And I was just getting older. I was rolling into my 30s, and it was tough. But what I learned was to be faithful to what God is telling you.
Okay.
Because the entire time I felt like God was saying that we would be parents, and that's what I held on to, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about our journey, but that's what you hold on to in that time. And if you're having a difficult time, and I think that it's important to say that men struggle with that too. Men struggle with the not having children, having a difficult time, no matter whose issue it was. We both had medical issues that made it difficult, but no matter whose issue it is, no matter what the issue is, men need to be able to say, like, this is tough for me too, right? And be open about that. So,
and then also, don't, sometimes it can be like, well, you're the reason why we can't have kids.
Right.
And the blame game is just not going to benefit your marriage. It's not going to benefit you guys growing closer together, which you have to do during any time or any trial.
Right.
And then if you start the blame game, you can find yourself in a place where you're like, I feel far from my spouse. I don't feel connected. Right. And so don't do the blame game. Yeah. It's not going to work. Yeah. And I don't think I ever felt like it was your fault, it was my fault. Right. I just felt like that's where we were in time. Did you?
No, I never felt like it was anybody's fault. No, that's not true. Once we found out that I had an issue with my sperm count, you're grown, you're watching this, I did kind of feel like man, it's my fault, like, why we're not having kids. So I did feel like that for a time, but eventually through prayer and
Right.
trust in the Lord, I got to a place where it was just this is just our situation,
Right.
and this is just where we are, and I believe and I know that God will work this out for us.
Right. I mean, but that didn't happen overnight. I
No.
mean, that was a course of, you know, maybe even more than a year.
Yeah, it would be a couple more years before we would have our daughter.
Right.
Or,
And so after we had we got the proper exams and tests, we then had to sit down and talk to each other and decide, you know, how we wanted to become parents. Because at that point, we knew, based on our results, that we would either have to adopt or do in vitro fertilization. That was kind of difficult.
Yeah.
And I think having those discussions released in me the idea, like, man, I'm not going to be able to give my husband a child. And when we had gotten the results, I was like, okay, cool. I know where we are. But then when the reality set in, it was just like, and I realized that I was a woman, even if I wasn't able to bear children, but it didn't feel like I was fulfilling all of who God had created me to be. And then I was like, I can't give my husband a child. This sucks. You know, what am I good for? Kind of thoughts. And so that was a tough time. Those were tough thoughts that I had to work through. And the Bible says that Satan comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And one way that he does that is working on our minds. And if you allow those thoughts to stay in there and maul around, it can really become a hindrance to you, your marriage, and all those around you. And so it was a little bit of a fight, but I'm grateful that my husband gave me the space to work through those thoughts, and I had the guidance and the help of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, because he had to keep my mind.
Yeah. And so it was a good thing we had worked on just communicating better with each other and making sure that we're checking in and showing love to each other, because this was a tough time. These were tough conversations that we had to have, because this was something that we both really, really wanted and felt like God was going to provide for us, right? The Bible says that if you trust in him, he'll give you the desires of your heart. And we weren't getting this desire now. So we had to have these conversations about, well, what do we want to do now? Still believing that God could give us our own biological children, but what are we going to do now? So what I learned there again was just knowing that God is faithful, and he hears you. Because then I think what happens, because a lot of people struggle with these type of decisions, and whether it's infertility or having a difficult time or whatever the issue is, I think a lot of times if you go too far, like you were saying, you got into dark places because you weren't able to do that. If you allow yourself to go too far into those dark places and you're not just visiting, you know, rent an apartment or whatever, you can feel like God doesn't hear you. You can feel like God is not listening to you, and you can start to try to figure out how to do it on your own. And that's when you get in trouble, trying to figure out how to do it on your own. And so being not even patient, because I think I was patient. I think we were being patient during the time, but being mindful of who God is and waiting on him in his time was what came out of that.
And so the lesson that I learned was that you're valuable. Having children is a really great experience, and I enjoy watching people do that. But if you can't have children, you're still valuable. You're valuable as a person, you're valuable as someone's wife, you're valuable as someone's spouse. That doesn't make you incomplete. That's just a privilege that some people get, and some people don't get it. And it can be difficult to accept that, but you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. And another thing, another lesson that I learned that I didn't know at the time of marriage is it is going to be vital that you somehow find yourself connected with a person who loves you no matter what in every season of your life. Like they have an understanding that they're marrying that person they're marrying when they marry you, but that you will change. There will be problems,
Right.
but they can still love you through it all.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine if we had gotten to that state, and even though we both had health issues, if you were like, if you can't give me kids, I don't want to be in this marriage anymore.
Right.
Because we were still pretty newlyweds.
Yeah.
And that could have happened.
Yeah.
And it probably has happened for many.
Oh, I'm sure it has.
Right?
Yeah.
And there was anything we could do about it.
Right.
It was medical. But a lot of people want to have their own biological children.
Mm-hmm.
And you may find yourself in a situation where you're with someone who wants to have biological children, and then you'll find out that one or the other is unable to do that. And that can be a really difficult place to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so really have these conversations early.
Right.
Now, for some of us, we have children before we get married, and that can be an indication that, you can have children. For other of us, we wait until after marriage, and this is a conversation that will be vital. And you have to be honest with yourself, and your spouse must be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those are conversations that you should have before you even make the decision to get married.
No, I don't think so.
I think so.
I think once you
because
get engaged,
you gotta know though. You gotta know whether or not you're trying to set your life with someone who at least believes that they can do it.
Well, I think that's what engagement is for.
But that's what I said before you get married.
Yeah, so that's what I think the process of engagement is for.
Yeah, you find that out.
Because it's not just to prepare for the wedding. Those are when you need to have these really we're about to get married conversations. Right. So what about this?
Yeah.
What if I lose my job? What if I lose my leg? What if I lose my arm?
Right. And have serious answers.
Right.
Right. Because the wedding is easy.
Right.
Like people talk about all the stress. It's the easy part, like wedding, marriage.
Right.
The two.
Right.
The wedding was the easy part. That's one day. You plan for it.
Some people's weddings last for weeks because they have
the culture is the same, but like in the West, where we live, most people's weddings are one day. Even if it's a week.
Right.
You still gonna be married longer than you had a wedding. So that's the easy part. All I'm saying is, try to have those conversations before you actually get married.
Right.
And that would help. Maybe. So, through a lot of conversation, a lot of prayer, and a lot of research, not necessarily on my part. My wife does a whole lot of researching. Mm-hmm. We decided that the way that we were going to be parents was we were going to adopt. Now, interestingly, we had talked about adoption before we got married. So the goal was, though, that after we have our own biological children, we were going to adopt too, because we know that there's a lot of kids in the foster system, a lot of kids that need good homes, a lot of particularly black children in the system that need good homes, and we wanted to be able to help in that way. So the decision to adopt wasn't a foreign one for us. Right. It just happened in a way that we didn't know.
Yeah, it was unexpected.
It happened first instead of second. So.
And so during those conversations, when we were after we had decided, I think adoption is going to be best for us. And then, and to be honest, one of the reasons why we settled on adoption was because at the time, in vitro fertilization wasn't covered by our health insurance, and we had really good health insurance. It just wasn't covered, right. And so, and for a lot of people, most people, it's not covered, and so it kind of forces you into making decisions in a different way. And so I think that we may have tried in vitro fertilization if it
was covered.
Yeah. We just didn't have the money.
Right.
Because goes into the thousands and thousands of dollars, right? And so we made the decision for adoption kind of like forcibly, though, because it was kind of like we either do adoption or we don't have kids, and we just keep trying.
Right.
And not that we decided on adoption because we felt like God couldn't do it, because even though we decided on adoption, I still felt like if God wanted to do it, if it was in his plan for us, we would get pregnant. And I always had that in the back of my mind. I mean, I took hundreds of pregnancy tests because I just would not give up on the idea that God would not do it for me.
Right.
And I mean, up until the time that I had my hysterectomy, I still thought, you know, if it was in God's plan, he would do it for us if it was in his plan.
Right.
And that really gave me hope, because I never wanted to be like, well, God is not going to do that for me, or he's not going to do that for me, because I knew that God could do all things, and that we could do all things with his help. And so we decided on adoption, and then we had to decide if we wanted to go private.
Right.
Because there are organizations that can help you go private, not necessarily internationally. We didn't want to do international adoption, but like locally private organizations, or if we wanted to adopt through the county.
Right. Yeah. And
so we decided to adopt through the county. Now that was a whole another thing.
Right.
It was kind of exciting though to like learn the processes, do the things, take the classes.
Like we had to take parenting classes. We had to take classes we had to actually qualify to be a foster parent.
Yeah.
First, so you had to take a class to be a foster parent, get a license, get fingerprinted, all those things. It was a whole lot more that you have to do if you were just gonna get pregnant.
Right.
Like, I think that like during that process, I came to the conclusion like every parent should go through something.
I felt like it. I was like
just
all parents should go through this. This is amazing.
It's a lot of training. It's a lot of training, and a lot of thought processes, and a lot of conversations that you have to have.
Right.
So, yeah.
And so the lesson that I learned was that it's a lot of work being a parent. Like, I know that millions of people just get pregnant and they birth children and then they just wing it.
Right.
But if you do the trainings and listen to the stories, my goodness,
right,
that might be enough to scare you straight.
Right.
So it is a lot of work outside of like the gestational period. It is a lot of work to be a parent, and a lot of those things we didn't think about. And I guess you really, as a parent, if you have biological children, you're just parenting on the fly. These parenting streets is hard.
Right. All right. I think that, and that matter of fact, I know that what stuck with me or what I learned was that like God said, He will give you the desires of your heart, but you have to be prepared because you don't know how it's going to come. And we had prayer time, conversation, and sometimes church folks try to be helpful, right? And some of that helpfulness is not helpful. Like, just believe, and I saw in my dream that you were gonna have triplets or something.
Right.
Oh, I know it. I know it. Okay. All right, sis. All right, we got you.
You know what? And
we love you.
I know it's out of love. I know it's out of love.
Right.
But sometimes it made a hard situation worse, because it's like, I can't have one kid. How do you see me having triplets?
Yeah. And we weren't talking about it, you know. And I don't know if it would have helped. I honestly don't know if it would have helped to talk to people about it. I don't know. But they were like, yeah, we know. Hey, why you? And then my mom, is something wrong with that? Why y'all not having? Yeah, something wrong. But I mean, I'm not telling you that.
Right. So, she was like, are y'all not doing what y'all supposed to be doing?
Right.
Girl.
Get out
okay.
Mama. So,
she's going to give classes?
I don't.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So, be prepared.
Give me the other cross.
Right. So, just be prepared.
Be prepared.
As much as you can, and be open to what God has planned for your life, and then walk in that and love it. We enjoy being parents now, and it's an amazing journey, and so we got to be open to that. Well, woman, that's it. That's all.
That's it.
That's all.
That's it. That's all.
All right.
See you next time.